This video is on offering feedback to respondents. So if you're a parent or if you've spent any time around young kids, you probably know that a good thing to do is to give them positive reinforcement. And when they do something right, you tell them, "Oh, that's great. You're so smart. You're such a good kid." And then when they do something that's not what you want, maybe you just ignore that and don't give them any feedback or any reinforcement. In some ways, respondents and all people are just like kids. We all want to know that we're doing a good job, and we all want some kind of reassurance that we're on the right path. So in the interviewing process, it's important to give a little bit of feedback to your respondents so they know that they're doing what you expect of them. So the official definition of feedback is neutral statements or actions which indicate to respondents that they are doing a good job. It's important to know here that it's not the content of their answer that's valuable. So they might give you an answer that is completely different from what you think or what you think they should think. It doesn't matter. Your opinions of these issues and of a respondent's answer don't mean anything here. What you're giving them feedback on is that they're participating. You want them to know that they're giving you the kinds of answers that you need and that you appreciate that. So we talk about 3 different types of feedback: short, long, and task-related feedback. Short feedback is just acknowledging that you are receiving usable data. And we suggest that you use these regularly, up to half the time. Probably not after every response that you get, but pretty regularly, saying things like, I see, or thank you. So it's important to remember, and I've pointed this out before, that interviewing is not a conversation. It's kind of an awkward exchange because you, the interviewer, are just asking questions, you're waiting for responses, and then you move on to the next. Using feedback like this, like or I see, shows the respondent that you are listening to them, even if you're not having a conversation or a back and forth like they might expect. Once in a while, again, not every question, not all the time, it's good to give a slightly longer feedback. So this shows respondents that it's valuable that they're participating. And you might want to use this after they've completed a section of the questionnaire, or after a question that seems difficult for them. You just want them to know that they're doing the right thing. You're really happy with the way they're participating. You can say things like, "Oh, that's helpful information," or "Thanks, it's important to get your opinions. It's really useful to find out what people think about this." Just little phrases to let them know they're on the right track, they're doing a good job, and we really value their participation, because without respondents, we would have no data. They're doing us a favor by giving us their time and answering these questions. And then finally, task-related feedback. So taking a survey is not something people do every day, where they have someone who they might not know well knocking on their door with a clipboard, asking them questions and writing down everything they say. So we want respondents to be as comfortable as possible. We want to explain to them sort of what's happening. So task-related feedback, we suggest that you use as needed. There's no real rule of thumb. Just when you feel that something, some explanation is needed. So an example might be, you've asked a question, you are marking down what they said, and they're just waiting for you to go on to the next question. That's where you can say something like, "Oh, let me get this down," so they understand why there's a few seconds of silence before you say something else. There might be places where a respondent feels like you're asking them the same question over and over again. And remember that it is your job as an interviewer to ask each question in the order that it appears. But you can say something like, "Oh, we've touched on this before, but I need to ask every question in the order that it appears." So they know that you're not wasting their time or not listening to them and then asking the same question over and over again. You're just doing your job, and the survey might be written in a way where questions that seem similar come up, and we want respondents to sort of bear with us and have patience as we go through this. So here's an example of providing short feedback. The question is, how important do you think it is to offer financial education to minors before they receive their big money payout? The interviewer reads the 4 response options. Very important, somewhat important, not very important, not at all important. Respondent says, very important. Interviewer at this point can say, thank you. And it's important to point out, I want to point out that the interviewer is giving feedback for a usable response. The respondent said, it's very important. That's one of our 4 options. Interviewer says, thank you. If the respondent said, it's pretty important, or it's extremely important, something that is not one of the 4 options on here, the interviewer should not provide feedback. You don't want to tell them, oh, thank you, you're doing a great job, when they're not giving you what you want, right? It's like if a little kid reaches across the table and grabs the salt, instead of saying, please pass the salt, you don't say, oh, you have such good manners. You ignore that or try to reinforce the behavior that you want rather than the behavior that you don't want. So that's giving feedback for a response like this, very important, rather than an unusable response.